Chapter 13 Urban Patterns. Key Issue 1. Downtown is known to be a central business district, or CBD, which is the area of a city where retail and office activities are clustered. CBD is responsible for 1% of urban land areas, but is a large percentage of public, business, and consumer services. Services are often attracted to CBDs because they are the easiest part of a region to reach. CBDs are the oldest part of the districts in a city, usually near large bodies of water. Public services located in CBDs are things like City Hall, courts, and libraries. These places are clustered in substantial structures. They also include semi-public services like places of worship. Sports facilities are also in this category, but are to attract large groups of people. Business services in CBDs, which include people in advertising, banking, finance, journalism, and law. Lawyers, for example, are located near government offices and courts because of the proximity. Then secretarial agencies locate near lawyers, creating a chain of interdependency. The different people in business services often meet with other companies with the service to discuss stock settlements, takeovers, and much more. Because of the central location, business services employ and give accessibility to many different groups/neighborhoods. Consumer services in CBDs mostly are retail services. There are three types of retail services in CBDs because they require accessibility to everyone in the region. The first is retailers with high thresholds, which are department stores which have the highest rents because of the most accessibility to customers. The second is retailers with a high range, which is specialist with customers who patronize them infrequently. They prefer CBD locations at one point because of all their customers were scattered over a wide area. The third is retailers serving downtown workers, which sell office supplies, computers, clothing or shoe repair, rapid photocopying, dry cleaning, and much more. Their main consumers is workers in downtown who shop during the lunch hour. High rents and land shortages discourage two principal activities in CBDs: industrial and residential. Key Issue 2, Part 1. They, there have been three models created to help explain where different people live in urban areas. The three models that are concentric zones, sector, and multiple nuclei models. They were developed in Chicago. Concentric zone models was the first model to explain the distribution of different social groups within urban areas. It was created in 1923 by sociologist E.W. Burgess, which shows how a city grows outward from the central area in a series of rings. In the 1920s, Burgess identified five rings: CBD, which is the innermost ring, where basically all the activity is concentrated. Two is a zone in transition, which contains industry and poor quality housing. The third was a zone of working class homes, which contains older home houses that occupy stable working class families. Four was a zone of better residencies, which contains newer and bigger houses for middle class families. Um, and the commuter zone, which is on the outside of the rings, which is for like small villages and like communities that most people work in the main CBD area. The second model is sector model, which was developed in 1939 by land economist Mohoyt, um, to which shows how a city develops in a series of sectors and not rings. Um, as a city grows, activities expand outward in a wedge or sector from the center, so kind of in parts instead of rings surrounding. In the last one, multiply nuclei model, geographers C.D. Harris and E.L. Ullman developed the multiple nuclei model in 1945. According to this model, a city is a complex structure that includes more than one center around the activities, which around which the activities revolve. Um, this is in like very populated neighborhoods, business centers, a university, a park. The multiple nuclei theory states that some activities are attracted to particular nodes, whereas others try to avoid them. So people just don't want to see there. The three models can help us understand where with different social characteristics tend to live within an urban area, and also help explain why certain types of people tend to live in particular places. Urban areas in the United States are divided into central tracts, which is an area deline- del- delineated by the U.S. Bureau of Census, which is statistics are published in urban areas. Census tracts correspond roughly to neighborhoods. Um, and they contain like 5,000 residents in each boundary or neighborhood. Um, Social scientists can compare the distribution of characteristics to create an overall picture with social area analysis, which you can see the definition on the board. Um, and then if the model, and it also shows how if the models are combined, they can show more detail about people. The models say that most people live near others who have similar characteristics. By using the concentric zone model, you have to consider two families with the same income and ethnic backgrounds. While using the sector model, you have to remember get or like try to use two families who own their homes and families with higher income will not live in the same sector of a city as the family with lower income. And when you're using the multiple nuclei model, you have to think of people with the same ethnic or racial background and who are likely to live near each other. By putting the three models together, you can identify these like their characteristics and why they live in certain places. Thank you.
The models differ from other places compared to North America. For example, CBDs in Europe are less dominated by buildings for business services, such as skyscrapers. Most structures are preserved as from when they were first laid out, such as former royal palaces. European cities display low-rise structures and narrow streets built in medieval times. Some cities try to preserve these historic CBDs by setting restrictions. As time goes on, gentrification along these cities are rising. For example, Paris with its newer housing and higher income. The models are looking similar to the United States. Wealthier people live in the center and to the southwest sector in European cities. In contrast to the US, cities such as Paris has its newer housing in the suburbs, which is high-rise apartment buildings for lower income people. Lower income people are more likely to live in outer rings along with the newer housing. Many cities in developing countries were shaped by colonial powers. For example, geographers Ernest Griffin and Larry Ford show that in Latin American cities, wealthier people are more attracted to the center and spine. To add on, services such as water and electricity are more reliable and available compared to elsewhere. Surrounding these inner cities is a ring of less developed and lower value land. Cities in developing countries can't support the growing number of poor people as well as population increase in general, whether from migration and or job opportunities. Due to this, a large percentage of poor immigrants live in squatter settlements. These settlements lack education, paved roads, sewers, and more. The three models show some similarities and differences within cities of North America and other regions. Moving forward, cities in developing countries are further influenced by colonial history. Starting with pre-colonial cities, few cities existed in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Mainly people lived in rural areas. In Latin America, some cities were located in interior Mexico or northeastern South America. In Africa, cities were found along the western coast, also Islamic empires in the north and south, in Southwest Asia as well. In colonial cities, once Europeans gained control, cities were expanded in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Cities since independence have shown major differences. For example, millions of people have migrated to the cities in the need of work. Population has grown rapidly since. Moving to the topic of suburban expansion. The peripheral model points to the problems of sprawl and segregation that characterize many suburbs. There are many terms that have been created to describe cities and their suburbs. They are: a city is a legal entity, an urban area is a continuously built up area, and a metropolitan area is a functional area. The word city defines an urban area that is an independent, self-governing unit. An urban area consists of a dense core of census tracts. An urbanized area is with at least 50,000 people. An urban cluster is an urban area with between 2,500 and 50,000 inhabitants. In Northeast United States, large metropolitan cities are close together. An urban area includes the city and built-up suburbs. A metropolitan area includes the city, built-up suburbs, and counties that are tied to the city. In some regions, adjacent metropolitan areas overlap with each, creating large urban complexes. The United States has nearly 90,000 local governments, making it difficult to address urban problems. Suburban sprawl has been documented to be costly. Suburbs are segregated according to social class and land uses. For example, upper class, middle class, and lower class. Motor vehicles take up a lot of space in cities, including streets, freeways, and parking lots. Some cities control the number of vehicles that can enter a city. There are some state benefits and limitations to public transportation.
There is also public transit in other countries as well. In these countries, there are major cities around the world that maintain their constructions like buses and trains, and any other transportation you see on the screen. There's even small cities now who have shared construction boom as well. For example, France has a new subway lines and continuous new tracks. There's as well growth in the suburbs, which has stimulated non-residential constructions like shops, industries, and offices. Advantages in public transit. Public transportation is cheaper, less polluting, and more energy efficient, while motor vehicles are pricey and there are more delays as well as high maintenance, which a lot of people don't have time for. There is different types of problems that lower developed countries have comparing to more developed countries. Lower developed countries have a more higher demand for vehicles and other new technology as they are very much delayed compared to more developed countries, while more developed countries right now are facing problems with consumers not wanting to let go of their motor vehicles. Now, this is a big challenge because reducing pollution and conserving renewable energy is a big problem we're trying to face right now, as currently we're undergoing global warming and it's like destroying our world like bad. But thanks to new technologies, we're figuring out different ways to conserve this energy. Ways as in diesel, which burns fuel more efficiently and is way more eco-friendly. Also hybrids, which are high speeds for gasoline engines and low speeds for electric engines. There is as well biofuels as ethanol, which is made from distilling crops, which is converted back into energy. And there's full electric and hybrids, which is no gas engines and rechargeable stations and battery powered. These electric cars seem really well, but they also require fossil fuels still, which is really bad for our planet. So, using natural gases may help preserve petroleum, and electricity is as well generated differently across the US states, so many of these options may be different depending on the state you live in. Why do cities face challenges? Most land in urban settlements is devoted to housing where people live. There are U.S. urban areas, which are inner city residential neighborhoods that surround the CBD. Inner cities include more lower income people with different challenges compared to ones in suburban areas, which are residential neighborhoods on the periphery. A major problem in inner cities is the poor condition of housing. There are deteriorated housing, which are either demolished, replaced, or flipped. These neighborhoods can quickly shift classes by just a few years because of this, which is a lower class and a middle class issue. A way of deterioration is by filtering, which is the process of subdivision of houses and occupying of lower income people. Landlords stop maintaining houses when the rent becomes less than the maintenance cost. Thousands of vacant houses in the US lie now because of the abandonment from landlords. An example of this can be found in Detroit, which their population has declined from 1.8 million in 1950 to 700,000 in 2010. Another way of deterioration is redlining, a process by which banks draw lines on a map and refuse to lend money to purchase or improve property within the boundaries. Many families who try to fix their houses now have struggled with it due to the difficulty of borrowing money. This is technically illegal, but enforcement laws are too difficult, so banks still be doing this. Public housing. Houses that are demolished and get turned into low income households. These are as well established by the government. The people who are in these public houses, their rent is 30% of the income that they get from their jobs. This is helpful for most families, but also controversial, as many of these are considered unsatisfactory environments due to the illegal acts that occur. Illegal acts such as crimes, drugs, gangs, and other things, etc. This has led to the US government to stop paying for these, but as there are still a lot of people who need these, there are other stuff like local governments, non-profitable governments, and federal programs that are still willing to pay for these. Woohoo! Gentrification. The process by middle class people move into deteriorated inner city neighborhoods and renovate the housing. There are many reasons for why people want to start doing this more now. It's because houses are usually larger and less expensive. There can be attractive architecture, and it's easier to get to places from the house since it's in the inner city, which so it's by theaters, bars, restaurants, stadiums, and more. There is as well low cost loans and tax breaks that can be used to these houses too. But cities are as well working and innovating lower income housing, like said in the previous slide, or other programs for lower income families who have been forced out. This is a problem that does occur with this type of deterioration. Lower income have no choice but to be forced out by the middle class as they are now deteriorating the house.